Hello, my name is Judy, by the way, and I am a special education teacher in Atlanta, Georgia. I am a part of group number 8 for the ISTE Chopped Challenge, and I will be guiding you through our project and how we have created a virtual space through GatherTown in order to facilitate learning. Our group consists of Jessica Barbary, myself, and Eric Walters. We worked together since probably the end of May in order to complete the project. So the title of our project is How to Use GatherTown in order to facilitate learning in a dynamic virtual space. If you haven't familiarized yourself with GatherTown before, I'll be walking you through a bit of it today. First of all, I want to go through the facilitator standards that are addressed in our project. So I'll do this quickly before I show you the actual platform. In our project, we address the standards of fostering a culture where students take ownership of their learning goals and outcomes in both independent and group settings. We help them manage the use of technology and student learning strategies in virtual environments. We have created learning opportunities to challenge students to use a design process to innovate and solve problems. And finally, we have modeled and nurtured creativity and creative expression to communicate ideas, knowledge, or connections. So I'll be coming back to these facilitator standards as I explain our project so that I can show you how we are promoting those standards specifically. So I will go ahead and show you how to get onto the GatherTown platform. You'll go to the last slide of our presentation where it says Join ISTE GatherTown. You don't have to have an account to join the space, um, but you will want to possibly create an account afterwards if you want to use the program yourself. So basically, you're going to click Join the Gathering. Well, first of all, you'll put your name here. And you can also edit your character if you'd like and personalize it. You'll be prompted at this screen to participate in the tutorial, which lets you know how to move around the space. Basically, you're going to use your arrow keys to move around the space, and you can mute and unmute yourself. And in order to interact with objects, mostly you're going to be pressing X to interact with objects. And we have tried to have prompts on each object in order to let you know that you can interact with it. Also, the objects that are interactive will glow. So you'll see them glowing yellow, and you'll know that that is an object you can interact with. So I'm going to press skip tutorial. So here is our ISTE school. I didn't name myself, so I am anonymous right now, but that's okay. So firstly, let me just give you a quick tour of our school. So this is like the main common room. And if we go up here to classroom D, this is a room where you could definitely start with your students, meaning that you could teach them about the design process here in this room. So you can see there's an object here you can interact with. We'll need to change the link for that to make it active. But this video could explain what the design process is. You can also use this area to teach your students about the skills they'll be learning about and the types of spaces they'll be exploring. For example, in this school or for this specific project, we are teaching students about the negative impacts of human waste on the environment and communities and other countries around the world. So this is just a general learning space where you can really specify what the students are going to be learning about. Another great feature of this room to help facilitate learning. So this is where like the direct instruction would take place. Another space to help facilitate small group learning are these individual spaces. Um, Basically, when the students enter these spaces, they are in a small group with one another, and it's kind of like a private space. So if 3 students are in room 6, the students in room 5 won't hear what the students in room 6 are talking about. However, facilitators can come here to these multicolored blocks and step into the rooms, individual rooms, in order to help facilitate learning and clarify any misunderstandings, or to just monitor the students to make sure they are on task. Okay, so moving on to the next part of our slide. So I'll kind of go back and forth between the slide presentation and the learning space. So if we look at the facilitator standards, you could see here where you have it provides spaces for independent and group work. As I just mentioned, those private spaces can be used either by individual students so that they're not distracted, or by small groups. Okay. All right, so exploring GatherTown. GatherTown makes spending time with your communities just as easy as real life. Centered around fully customizable spaces, Gather locates student learning for our Chopped Challenge and a metaverse for learning. Our environment includes several spaces for learning. So I'm going to show you those different spaces that we've created. A collaborative learning space allows students to explore the basics of design thinking and discuss what they have learned, while individual learning spaces allow students to build empathy using case studies and scenarios. So when I show you the individual learning spaces, you'll understand more what I'm talking about. To access GatherTown, please make sure that you're using the latest version of your browser on a Windows, Mac, or Chromebook, and we do not recommend using an iPad or other mobile device to explore the space. So the learning process is as follows. In this activity, students will start in the collaborative learning space, which I already showed you, to develop their understanding of the design thinking process. The focus of their learning will be human activities and their environmental impact at home and abroad. So humans produce obviously solid waste, CO2 emissions, etc., and these have multiple negative impacts on the environment. In teams, the students will explore one of the 4 individualized spaces. And actually, we haven't done the Great Pacific Garbage Patch space yet, but that's something we can build onto. But the 3 sites that we have specifically as of now are the Superfund sites in Georgia, the Fresh Kills landfill, the former Fresh Kills landfill space in the Staten Island, New York, and looking at Australia and how global warming and pollution has affected the environment in Australia. So through learning and going through these different learning spaces about the Superfund sites or about the Fresh Kills landfill, the students will build empathy and understanding on the issues of human activity and climate change. So after they've explored the individual spaces, they're going to return to that collaborative learning space and share what they've learned jigsaw style. They will define a local environmental problem and possibly determine solutions or prototype a solution and test their solution. We've also provided a kind of an activity page for students who don't want to do something so complicated. It's called a choice board, and I'll show you that when we get into the individual spaces. All right, so I'm going to jump back into our space, and I'm going to show you some of those spaces that we have created for learning. So here you can see when you go to this cafe board, you can see that, well, first of all, there's a little go-kart there, but I don't want to ride that right now. So I'm going to press an X to knock on the door, and then it's going to open this link. It's going to open this sticky note, and it says, when you tap on this link, the door will open to a room in a new tab. Once you have entered the new room, close out the previous space you were in. This will save you some uncomfortable sound feedback. So basically, you want to open this room in a new link and close this tab. Okay, so I'll kind of show you what I'm talking about. Open this link. Join this gathering. And then I want to close this link, because if you're with multiple people, or you close that tab, the first tab, because if you're with multiple people, it will create a lot of like double sounds. So it's very distracting. So in this space, Eric has created a few different modules for students to explore about the area surrounding the the former Fresh Kills landfill. For example, there's a video on 11 things you didn't know about Staten Island, what the ride to the Staten Island ferry from Manhattan is like, uh, an article to read more about Fresh Kills landfill, another article on what happens to New York's 3.2 million tons of trash. I think that was, yeah, tons of trash that's produced. So you can see it guides the students through the different modules, learning modules. And then, so in this space, one of the teachers could facilitate the students' learning by monitoring their activity, the group's activity in this space, making sure they're here to answer any questions, maybe ask them some guiding questions to promote their thinking. And finally, in this, um, at this bulletin board, you can see it says click here to access your reflection document. So this is a board that the students will have access to. So this will provide them a way to document either their learning, or you can have, like, the sticky note here says, what questions do you have for the citizens of Staten Island who have lived with Fresh Kills landfill and its effects since 1948? So you could post those questions here. There's all different types of graphic organizers that you could post on the Jamboard, so that the students could create like a mind map of what they learned in that module. Therefore, they'll be able to use that information during their creative project. So I'm going to close this out. And now we're going to go back to the main room. So it says click here to return to the ISTE classroom. So I'm going to press X and open this. And then obviously I'm going to close this one again. So I'm back in the main classroom. I'm going to go to the space I created. If you have an account, you don't have to write your name every time. So in this space, specifically, the students are going to be learning about Superfund sites. And specifically, if you don't already know, a Superfund site is a site where industrial waste was laid or put into the earth basically to prevent it from causing further damage. However, if it wasn't done properly, it will cause damage to the environment. So essentially the students will start here at an information board where a introductory video for this specific space will be located. That way I can explain specifically kind of what the different modules are for the students and what they're supposed to do in this space. So, for example, they will also follow the little footpaths to go down to each little module. So, the first article is reading about the Superfund sites. Then, here at each water tank, I've placed my Jamboard, which is the See, Think, and Wonder Jamboard. So this type of graphic organizer allows the student to document what they are observing in their learning space, what it's causing them to think about, and then maybe what it's causing them to wonder about, like what questions do they have. So this can be used throughout this space, and I've made 4 for each group member. You can make additional ones if needed. I've made this to help document their learning along the way, which again can be used in their final project. So you can see in this space there's just all different types of little interactive modules. Like here is a article and about a Superfund list and how Superfund sites are often tied to minority areas. And then basically they'll just travel down the state and they'll go, again, here's the link to the Jamboard again, if they want to document their learning from these 2 videos. And then they'll go down here close to Macon, and there's 2 additional Superfund sites. There's 16 Superfund sites in Georgia, but I've only shown a few here. And then here's another opportunity to access their Jamboard. And then here in Brunswick, Georgia is another Superfund site. And then they're going to go back up. This module allows them to actually find out, if they're not from Georgia, to find out if there's a Superfund site near them where they live. Finally, the last, and then of course they can have another opportunity to document any information they want to on their graphic organizer. Finally, this module shows the choice board. So this is just one option teachers can provide to students. And this is used similarly in the Australia room, where the students will use the design process. And I've linked to a PBS presentation on what the design process is if the students need a reminder. And they can use their Jamboard. So again, I've linked the Jamboard to plan out any of the following activities. For example, they can create a comic strip, newscast, podcast, children's book, infographic, or descriptive presentation. So one way that we've modeled creativity for our students in the space is that we've provided different types of media to learn about the space. So, for example, one of the modules is like this microphone module is the link to a podcast. So if the students wanted to create a podcast, we've given them the opportunity to listen to a podcast and to see what they're like, hopefully to prompt that creativity. And again, this module is a link to a newscast. So if the students wanted to create their own newscast, we've provided a model on how to do that. You can see that there. Okay, so I'm going to close out that room. So I'm back in here into the main space. And this information board is basically the link to the Google slide that I've been showing you now. And with this one, you don't have to click a separate link to go through into the next room. You can just walk right through. So this is the last space that Jesse created, and it is a space to provide the students with the opportunity to explore Australia and the different types of um, situations that are causing global warming and the types of pollution that is occurring. And so what the students will do is they can get on a go-kart. Let me grab a go-kart. And they can ride their go-kart around the track. And so what they're trying to do is find the glowing cones. So here, for example, they can listen to or watch this video, State of the Climate. So this gives you an overview of climate and of the climate in Australia and how climate change is impacting Australia. So one note is that if you're on the go-kart, you have to get off in order to interact with an object. But I'm going to get back on it. So you can see she's made it look like the coast of Australia with the sand and the water. And then here's another module. Again, I have to get off, so you have to double tap X to get off the go-kart. Read key takeaways from the climate report. So this gives you a summary of the climate report and the environmental impacts that have caused climate change in Australia. So basically, the students would tour this space. And here they have access again to the See, Think, Wonder Jamboard that's made specifically for this space. So I can show you what that looks like. So here's the See, Think, Wonder graphic organizer for the Australia climate change space. So again, the students can document their learning. They're using technology basically at every learning opportunity they have in Gathertown. So after the students have gone through all of the modules in Australia, they will also have a choice board, much like the one um, that was given to them in the state of Georgia, the Superfund site. So it'll be a very similar choice board, but for the Australia room. And it might take me a second to find that at the moment, but it's at the end. Let me grab my cart. So you can see how it could be a lot of fun for the students to move around on the go-kart, especially when there's multiple students in the room. Here they can read about the perspective of Australian homeowners and how climate change has affected them. I think we might be getting towards the end here. Okay, here is the reflection Jamboard that I was talking about. The See, Think, Wonder. And then I believe the link to her choice board is, it's located in this module. I just need to find it specifically, but um, it's there. All right, so we're going to go back to the main room. And then I'm going to come back to my slides presentation. There were just a few notes I wanted to go over briefly in regards to the special notes for facilitators. So, in regards to the common space, we would recommend that teachers start out in the common room of the school. So, in this common room being the classroom, we would recommend that the students start out in this room because it's a familiar space. You don't want to overwhelm the students. So, in order to keep the students in this common room, it is advisable to lock the other rooms by removing the entry links on the sticky notes. So, for example, if you only want the students to be able to explore the common spaces, you can remove the links in order to enter these rooms, and you can make the other room impassable so that they can only go into the common spaces. And that helps kind of restrict their movement so that they're not moving ahead and getting kind of lost. Additionally, facilitators, as I've already discussed, can use the private spaces. This allows for, teachers to provide support for students who may need additional assistance, and a quiet space for student if a student wants to work or needs to work individually. Although kind of the point of GatherTown is collaboration, but there are private spaces in there if needed. Again, I've already talked about the multicolored sound blocks, which is a great way to facilitate co-teaching, so that multiple facilitators can listen in and support the small groups. Um, Again, the larger classroom can be used to facilitate direct instruction on the design process. And this is one of the biggest items that you need to understand, or that students need to understand, is you will need to explain to the students that in order for them to communicate with one another in any GatherTown space, they will need to be close to one another in the space. This allows for a more real world experience, and that it requires collaboration among students in order to communicate with one another. So, for example, if I'm with one of my co-teachers, if unless they are standing in this general area around me, they're not going to be able to communicate with me. So it's the same for students. So it kind of forces them to work together simultaneously within this space. So if a student kind of wanders off, they're going to miss out on what their group is talking about, and therefore not have that collaborative experience. So it's kind of a natural motivating factor to be collaborative within this space. All right, so I hope you've enjoyed my presentation on the platform that we've created for the Chopped Challenge. And obviously, you can reach out to either one of us if needed, if you have any questions. All right, thank you so much.